Today we're making Armenian braised lamb shanks with polenta and broccoli rabe. Now this is sort of an Armenian-Italian fusion because I got it from an Armenian friend of mine who is married to an Italian. And I think that's the cool thing about Connecticut. We have so many different ethnicities. You can mix and match, do fusion things, so we're going to really go to town with that. I've seasoned lamb shanks. I'm going to brown those in some olive oil. The interesting thing about this recipe is that it uses olive oil rather than vegetable oil for the browning. And when you do that, you have to brown at a lower temperature because olive oil has a lower burn point. So it's not going to get a really deep brown. And then in the same fat and olive oil with maybe a little bit more olive oil, we'll saute some onions and garlic and rosemary and then toss them in tomato paste. So all that gets sauteed, and then you add, and this is what it says, add stock and wine. It doesn't say what kind of stock, doesn't say how much wine. I figured, for it not to be too winey, it's probably good to have it like 2 parts stock to 1 part wine. They said chicken or beef stock. I just happen to have lamb stock. Everybody should have lamb stock in their fridge. That's going to go in the oven, 350 for 2 hours. Kind of an unusually high braising temperature, but we're going with it. Usually you would do it, maybe 300, maybe even 275, but for longer. So this is a little shorter braise, a little hotter. So that's going to go in the oven for 2 hours. And then towards the end of that, we'll make polenta, which takes a good half hour, 45 minutes to make. And polenta is basically 4 parts water or stock to one part polenta. So 1 cup polenta would be 4 cups water, right? But again, I just happen to have Parmesan broth in the fridge. And since polenta has Parmesan cheese in it and butter, I thought, well, that could be good. So we'll find out. But what you do is you save the rinds from the Parmesan and you make them like they were the bones in a stock. You put other stuff in there, onions and stuff, but it's basically the rinds of the leftover Parmesan simmered in water. So that's going to be the polenta. And then when that's, getting to like maybe 20 minutes left or so, then we'll start cooking the broccoli rabe. And you think, well, 20 minutes for broccoli rabe, well, you're going to overcook it. And the interesting thing about broccoli rabe is, unlike almost every other vegetable, it actually gets better the longer you cook it. I mean, there's a point of diminishing return, but 20-30 minutes is good, with olive oil and garlic. And that'll all come together and we'll have a great feast. Okay, ready to braise some lamb shanks? I should say these lamb shanks are from Yankee Rock Farm in Vermont and Connecticut. They're raised, the lamb is raised by this great young couple, Siri Swanson and Colin Sigmund. And they're actually going to be my guests at the next virtual table on March 21st, Sunday, March 21st at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So what we're going to do here, I'm heating up this Dutch oven, put some olive oil in it, medium hot heat, and we're just going to brown these lamb shanks. Now, a lamb shank is the part of the front leg of the lamb below the knee. It's like the shin. I guess you could think of it as the shin. And the shoulder and the shank and the lamb to me are the best part of the lamb. So anyway, here we go. So I'm chopping up onion, slicing onion while the shanks are browning. They go about 4 minutes aside. That's a good time to slice the onions and the garlic and the carrots. You slice it pretty thick. It's a long braise. If you slice the onions too thin, especially when you're using a hotter braise like this, there's a risk that they burn. I'm going to chop some garlic. I should say I used 2 small onions, but that would be for 2 shanks. Obviously, if you're doing 4, you're going to do more. just coarsely chop it. Again, that's pretty much going to disintegrate in the braise, so it doesn't have to be minced. Okay, the shanks are done browning. A nice brown. Here's the onions. I'm just going to soften them a little bit, a couple minutes. Turn the heat down, otherwise you're going to burn the onions. So I'm just going to peel these carrots. This is a whole bunch of carrots, one whole bunch. I'm going to put the whole bunch in. There's a fair amount of braising liquid. They have a nice sweetness. It's almost like adding a side dish to the braise. I'm going to put the garlic in. Garlic doesn't have to cook as long as onion. If you cook it too much, it burns, it's bitter. So they only need to go like a minute max. And maybe I'll put those in too. All right, those go in. I didn't even peel the bottom of the carrot. I don't think it needs it. I have a feeling that would be kind of cool. I'm going to take, let's say, three sprigs of rosemary, and just strip the leaves right into the pan. No need to chop them. Again, they're going to kind of disintegrate, but you can also eat around them. I just think they're prettier whole. I'm going to put in this tomato paste, and it just says to coat them. It's probably like maybe 1.5 tablespoons, something like that. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, now so here's the wine. So the thing about braising, it's a combination heat. So the part that's in the braising liquid is a wet heat, and the part that's above it that just steams is a dry heat. And so you don't want to submerge the meat completely. It's like, the way I think of it, it's kind of like it's in a bathtub, you know? Top part of it's above the water, legs and all is below. So you can see, so that's 3 cups of liquid in this Dutch oven for the 2 pretty good sized lamb shanks. Now I'm going to raise the heat, bring that to a boil or a high simmer, and then we'll cover it and put it in the oven for 2 hours. So these are the shanks at the halfway point. I'm just going to turn them over, and then I'm going to turn the heat down from 350 to 300. And then let them cook another. They've cooked an hour, and let them cook another hour. Polenta's 4 parts liquid, 1 part. Polenta could be slightly less than 1 part, so a little bit less than a cup of polenta to 4 cups of liquid. I'm using some Parmesan broth that I made from Parmesan rinds. And I think most polenta recipes call for like a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to put a little bit less than that in because whatever you're cooking, you should think about the saltiness of the stuff you're working with. When you add salt, you don't oversalt. Taste it and adjust. So you bring this to a boil, and then you slowly whisk in the polenta. So polenta is cornmeal, right? And this cornmeal was from an organic farm in the north of Italy. I bought it from the farmer. He ground it for me in his little mini corn grinding mill in his kitchen. So That's about as close to the authentic Italian polenta you can get. Polenta is a northern Italian dish. South it's pasta, in the north it's rice and polenta. So that's what I'm starting with. Just slowly adding this cornmeal to the broth. This will thicken as you whisk it. So about 5 minutes of this. This particular recipe for polenta has Parmesan in it at the end, so using a Parmesan broth is going to be super Parmesan-y. I hope not too strong, but I think it'll be good. You can see that's getting thicker. So I've been stirring this for 5 minutes. Now I'm going to cover it and cook it for 30 minutes, and every 5 minutes I'll stop and whisk it. So I'm going to heat some olive oil in a skillet. Then I'll add garlic and the broccoli rabe. So I like to use a lot of garlic in broccoli rabe. And this is just going to be sliced. It'll get browned and crisp the way I'm cooking it, because I'm cooking the rabe, for half an hour or so. So just adding this garlic. I'm just going to rinse them, not so much to clean them, just to get them wet. I think it's good to have some liquid in with the broccoli rabe. And this is going to sizzle. Let's give it a good whisk. Come back in another 5 minutes. When the polenta's gone 30 minutes, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter and a half a cup of Parmesan. So that looks like a tablespoon to me. That's a tablespoon. Now I'm going to grate some fresh Parmesan. Don't use Parmesan that you buy grated. Buy a block of Parmesan. It'll have a rind on it. You can cut the rind off, keep those, and then when you got enough of them, like a pound of them, you can make a broth out of it, which is what I did. But if you freshly grate your Parmesan and get used to that taste, you'll never go back to buying it grated. It's just like 2 different foods. So half a cup. Pretty close. So this has gone 30 minutes, and now I'm going to add in some butter and Parmesan. Turn the heat off. My 2 tablespoons of butter. Add that in, let it melt in. Add in the half cup of Parmesan. Let that melt in. That's going to sit for 5 minutes. So it's been 5 minutes. The polenta's done. I'm just going to taste it, check it for seasoning. Oh, I think that's just right. It's going to be great with the braising liquid from the lamb on it. I'm just going to leave it to sit until we're ready to plate it with the lamb. Now, just in a few minutes, I'm going to take the lamb out of the oven and plate it with polenta and broccoli rabe, and it will be awesome. Just put some on the plate. just going to put a little bit of the braising liquid on top of it. And another little dab of butter. A little sprinkle of Parmesan. And then a little chopped parsley. Voila.